Self-Protection, Series 3. Toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Guidance. Intuition. The average impression may be likened to a comet, a light which shines for a time in the heavens, but cannot be depended upon continually. But the trained impression is like a planet, which has its regular course and which obeys the laws of the heavenly bodies. Yet this same light, this same faculty, if developed, becomes more like a fixed star that can always be depended upon as a beacon light, and like the star symbol, is a sure means of both guidance and protection. It's a little surprising, isn't it? The average impression may be likened to a comet, a light which shines for a time in the heavens, but cannot be depended upon continually. The trained impression is like a planet that has its regular course and which obeys the laws of the heavenly bodies. Yet this same light, this same faculty, if developed, becomes more like a fixed star, which can always be depended upon as a beacon light, and like the star symbol, is a sure means of both guidance and protection. What is called intuition is not peculiarly the property of man alone. While people share with the animals the faculties of instinct, impression, and intuition, we really possess more of the latter, intuition, than do the animals. The proof is that wherever there is heart and blood, there are heart faculties and blood faculties. That man has more of the heart faculties can be seen through humanity's moral evolution, and especially in our possessing the qualities of mercy and compassion which belong to Allah. Other moral qualities are found among the animals, but mercy and compassion are especially reserved by God for people among all His creatures. There is a bit of a continuum on this. Humans are not quite entirely apart from animals. The other day I was seeing a television show on elephants and how, there was a group of elephants that had an elephant that had a sore leg, and this group would always slow their pace to try to accommodate their crippled friend. And elephants are known to mourn. And when an elephant dies, they'll all come and visit and stand watch. And they show every sign of being very distressed. And likewise dogs, are well known to save their masters and have mercy and compassion towards other dogs in their pack, at least to a point. What puts humanity apart, though, is our capacity for this. As Karl Marx said, a change in quantity can become a change in quality. And with humanity, we have the capacity for infinite mercy and compassion. Infinite to us, at least, as much as we can hold, but that amount is more than what the animals can hold. And because, as human beings, we have more of the powers of God, unlike other animals, we can change the entire atmosphere and climate of the planet, for example. Because of this, we also have more capacity to manifest mercy and compassion. It can flow through us, and we can make it happen to a degree that other animals cannot. Elephants cannot save the world, but we can. It's true, we're saving it from ourselves often, but nonetheless, the same capacities that can get us in trouble can get us out of it. I was reading in Science magazine, some ecologists were saying that we've reached the point on our planet where the survival of every single species, including us, depends on us. Our capacity for mercy and compassion is very large, and it's now a challenge for us to live up to that capacity. But I digress. Now, the heart cannot develop only moral qualities. As physical growth brings muscular strength, endurance, ability to assimilate food, virility, and other powers all at the same time, so the development of the heart, whether through mystical practices or by other means, brings not only the heart's moral qualities, but also the heart's metaphysical qualities. So meditation is the method which purifies the heart in all its aspects and makes one sensitive to a great degree. This sensitivity towards others in outer behavior enlivens moral qualities, but the same sensitivity within develops the intuition. And both may come at the same time, in the same way, through the same spiritual practices. Intuition differs from impression in that one is or may be conscious of the process. The sleeper has awakened, so to speak. Although when practicing namaz, one places all dependence upon God, at a higher stage this dependence blossoms into life in the intuitive faculty, which brings the answer to every question, not as man would have it, but as the wisdom of God would have it. Intuition is a steady stream or fountain, whereas impressions come as scattered drops of rain. The intuition is not to be confused with reason, which is a mental faculty. Although intuition is always rational, it is direct, spontaneous, and immediate. It may be called super-rational and is directed toward action rather than being subject to analysis. The beauty of intuition is that it always tells the correct mode of activity, either for the sake of protection or for the sake of advancement, and is never to be doubted, for it can never be wrong. It is the music of God singing in the human heart. The intuition is not the conscience, although there need be no difference in their practical application. Conscience depends upon past experience, and its judgment prevents one from repeating past mistakes. On the other hand, intuition is independent of both time and experience, and may be said rather to point to the future. Its light becomes more dependable the more it is called upon. Conscience will say, the other roads are wrong. Intuition will tell you, this is the right path. Intuitions may appear to be independent from the other, but that is due to the personality directing the consciousness, sometimes to the heart, sometimes to the surface. When one perceives omniscient unity in all beings, this difference automatically disappears. Of course, in times of danger or warning, the impression from the heart will always be stronger, and especially in time of pain or suffering, one turns within, knowing that from within solace will come. The sage differs from the ordinary man in that the sage always turns within for all answers, and by implicit obedience to the voice of God in the heart, avoids the mistakes and troubles that others meet with so much in their daily lives. Once I had occasion, actually many times I've had occasion, to drive around with Shahabadi. Random driving with Shahabadi. No destination as far as I could tell. Where should we go next? Left or right? Straight? What? It struck me as being bizarre at first, but I realized that what we were doing was just working a bit on intuition. Shahabadin has a number of stories where his intuition led him here or there. There are endeavors in our life, in the life of people, well, there are things people do that depend heavily upon intuition. Say mathematics, where if you study it, you get trained in what your intuition tells you. And then you sort of work backward to how you get there. You rationalize it, as it were. Or in science, again, where people will see what's intuitively obvious and then spend years doing the experiment to show what it is. The experiments have to be rational because you have to have rational results to make it real on the material plane and to convince the other scientists that it's actually the case. But in every instance, a leap is taken, an advancement, and then the backfilling comes in to show all the steps that could have taken us there, if only we would have known what those steps were in advance. In our everyday life, our intuitions get overlooked often. We don't quite want to believe them. And we don't necessarily follow them. And sometimes they can lead us to, we think, places that seem strange and not quite like us. It takes experience and practice and trust and ultimately faith to follow our intuitions wherever they may go. Now, you'll note that Murshid Sam in this paper made a distinction between intuition and conscience, and points out that our intuition can lead us to places that our conscience may not think we should go. Now, of course, we are trained, especially here, to follow our conscience. You know, on the Sufi path, if anybody asks you to do something that your conscience says, forget it, you forget it. You know? This is not our way to try to override our conscience. And yet, from time to time, we may be led to do things that are beyond the realm of our conscience. As Murshid Sam says, conscience is looking backward at our experience. And we may be asked to go someplace that we haven't had the experience with yet. This requires a very fine discrimination. And it requires training your intuition so that you know it and you trust it and you know what it is. It is the difference between the comet that comes and there's a light that you can see in the sky, but you can't rely upon that light, the light of impressions and the things coming into you for guidance, because they're changeable and occasional. You know, there's going to be a wonderful comet at the end of the year, they say. They're hoping it might be one of the brightest ever. So we train our faculty, and at first it's more like a planet. Jupiter, for example, that we can see a lot of the time, and we know where it's going, and we can actually sort of predict it. But we can't rely upon planets for guidance and navigation because they go retrograde and they go here and there and they disappear and they get on the other side of the sun. It's better when we have an intuition that we can see is a faculty within us and we know that it's there and more or less where it is and where we can find it. But it's not as good as having it steady, reliable, like a star. And of all the stars, we would want it to be the North Star, the unchanging place that we can use to navigate through the vicissitudes of life. Intuition does not seem to us to be rational when it occurs. Intuition seems to us to be out of the blue. Its rationality is something that the rational mind needs to understand stepwise, step at a time. Rationality is very useful. It's not very fast. And it doesn't choose the path we can take. I mean, as Chaucer pointed out, using rational logic, I can convince you that the road that we're walking upon is actually 5 miles wide. So he says in The Wife of Bath. And you can use rationality to rationalize anything. And in the service of our egos, it's fun to watch how we can spin up everything to make sure that we're right. I'm really good at that. That's necessary for us to listen to our intuitions. You know, the possibilities. One of Pierre Vilayet's favorite sayings was, "What if?" You know, we don't really know. And as always and as usual, it is our ego and that point of view of self-protection, so necessary but so confining, that is sometimes the main, sometimes? Well, I guess, might be other times that something else is the obstacle to progress, but often the obstacle to progress. There's a Nasruddin story. A king comes upon Nasruddin and thinks that he's some sort of prophet. And the king says to him, "So tell me a prophecy." And Nasruddin looks at him and says, And the king says, "Okay, so tell me a prophecy or I'm going to kill you." And Nasruddin starts prophesizing all these things that he sees. And the king says, "Well, that's better. So what was the difference?" And Nasruddin says, "Well, fear is all I needed." Well, fear is a kind of Sufi technical term. In Arabic, it's a play on words and so forth. But I find for myself that there's this state of something like apprehension, a little bit of tension, a little bit of whatnot. It's hard to describe from the outside, but it is a little bit related to fear that, just sort of opens up where things are. It's the way the brain works. What we're trying to do at some level, in 2 minutes, is train ourselves to find the places and find them again. We have within us everything, it's all there. I mean, all the pieces. We can do all of this. We have it already. In the original sense of education, we're just trying to bring it out. And we find ourselves in psychic spaces and places all the time. What we need to do is have a little bit more awareness, watching our breath, watching ourselves so that we know where we are when we are. And then try to bookmark that place. Make a note of this feeling, of this, atmosphere that is present. And by doing this over and over again, we come to be able to get a sense of when we're close. We come to be able to find the way that we can bring ourselves to this. We facilitate the pathway. We wear a rut in the road. We make our brains change, which they're changing all the time, and strengthen particular pathways in places that are present in us already, but are not necessarily used as much. In everyday life, we're called upon to use our thumbs, to text and use our discrimination about spam. You can refine this so that you can just look at a mail and throw it away without opening it, or your emails, or your phone calls. But doing this within and finding where it is takes a little bit of training and a little bit of feedback. And so with our intuition, You say, well, could be. Well, go for it. And you watch how it turns out. Sometimes the results aren't immediate, but they're immediate enough of the time so that you can get some feeling for what's really a real intuition and what's, sort of a filtered intuition or something that comes through your mind. That and a little bit of courage to see where it goes is all we take, or all we need. All right, well, time to go. So let's close with the prayer, the usual prayer. Khatam, just for those of us who need to know the name of the usual prayer. O Thou, who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the Lord of heaven and earth, open our hearts that we may hear Thy voice, which constantly comes from within. Disclose to us Thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us Thy great goodness. Teach us Thy loving forgiveness. Raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide us. Send us the peace of Thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in Thy perfect being. Amen.